period of identities that didn't exist so easily back there. And so this conversation about where do I stand and who do I stand with feels more complex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if that's me as an older white dude trying to swim around figuring out what's happening, or whether you feel this sense of what social identity is has evolved and changed at all over the last, let's say, 10 years.
It's a very good question. I don't necessarily have a perfect handle on it. And one of the things that, just by the way, I love about reading Apaya's work is I don't necessarily find answers there, but I find a great thought process. I can see him as I read, thinking through these things, and it gets me thinking through them, even though I haven't necessarily arrived at a good answer. And I think the moment we're currently living in, there's again a bit of a tension, because on the one hand, I think it is the case that people have been thinking a lot about social identities and the groups they belong to that might be of value to them, and have started to think a lot about, for example, intersectionality, how you might belong to a particular racial category, but you also have, of course, have a gender and sexual orientation, and those things might intersect in unique ways. So the experience, for example, of a gay Black woman is not the same as a straight Black man.
Right.
The intersection of those things is itself potentially a type of category, and it can feel, I think, sometimes, especially maybe as a white man, that there's this fragmentation. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, we're also living in this time of incredible polarization, right? Where political identities have become hyper salient and in some ways all consuming. And political scientists, when they talk about polarization, sometimes describe it as a flattening of identity. That it's like all the richness of our identities in life have been collapsed into a single dimension. Now all that matters is your political identity, and everything else has to become part of that. And I think that's a huge loss of the richness of life. And to some extent, I think there's a battle between these things right now. On the one hand, trying to claim the richness of my unique set of categories and really figuring out what do those things mean. On the other hand, this urge to put everyone in a bucket and say, well, you're left or you're on the right, and that's all
you're red, you're blue. Yeah.
You're red, you're blue. And I think rightly, people are pushing back against, or it just doesn't feel right. Like that isn't really who I am. And I'm a big believer in what you might call, or what has been called, social identity complexity, which is, it's good for us psychologically, and I think it's good for societies when you let people have multiple identities, and that they can approach life through those identities, with different identities being operative at different times. And then one of the challenges, one of the philosophical issues of all of this is, how do you live a good life? What does it mean to live a good life when you do hold multiple identities and you have to make choices and you want to act in ways that are authentic to different aspects of yourself? What does that mean for you?
Right.